for it, but we were actually we were given permission to do in-person camps by both our city as well as our board and all of that. So in order to do it, basically, we got a ton of calls from parents and everything. So I'm going to go over kind of how we decided to do it, what alterations were changed. So we did 5 weeks outdoors, and then we did 1 week indoors. And then the past 2 weeks, we actually just did 2 spring break camps. So I'll kind of go over what worked, what didn't. There's always going to be some of that. And some things that we learned that we did last year that we didn't do in spring break camp that we are going to do again in summer camp. So what we should have carried over and we didn't. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see, and get a PowerPoint coming up. All right, so let's see. All right, can everybody see that? Just make sure I'm okay. Technology, not my thing. All right, guys. So adjustments, alterations, adaptations. Last year, right basically after quarantine, we started to get a whole lot of requests to do summer camp. Our summer camps we do at our wildlife preserve, and it sells out every year. We do everything in-house, from crafts to teaching to the planning, all of it is in-house. So last year it was me doing it. In a little bit about how we run. So my job actually is in both education and interpretation. So these are some of the fun pictures of random things that I get to do with my job. We do a nighttime at the museum. So we have the Star Wars people come in every year, and that's always fun. Doing a little bit of dress up. We do, I guess there's me as Rosie the Riveter. Everybody's got to have an inflatable T-Rex. So all kinds of just fun things that this is my job. So I'm pretty lucky in that way, because of where I'm at, what I do. My day is never the same. I'm sure much like you guys. So that's a little bit about me. Now, about the museum. So the Charleston Museum, and there's Sir Benson there. So about the Charleston Museum. So the Charleston Museum has actually been around since 1773. Because we've been around so long, a lot of our programs have been around forever. We actually started, and we started museum education with Laura Bragg in the 1920s. So the idea of traveling trunks actually originated with the Charleston Museum's education department, originated back in 1920. So this is actually our new entrance over here, my dog. And then we actually own 2 historic houses. So we own the Hayward Washington House, which is a 1772 house. The backyard actually is a little bit earlier, dating back to about the 1740s. You can see kind of the backyard of there. We do actually have our slave quarters intact, which means we get to do a lot of fun interpreting of not always the best, easiest subjects. So we get to do a lot of that. And then we do also own the Joseph Manigault House, which is an 1803 house. So part of the fun part. Now, this is the Dill. So the Dill Sanctuary is, like I said, a 580-acre wildlife preserve. It was basically willed to the museum under the guise that it would become a wildlife preserve. So that's what we did. We do actually have nesting wood storks. So we have a freshwater pond. We have some alligators that we just found out are mating this year. That's fun. We actually have 4 fortifications from the Civil War on the property. We have a slave cemetery. We also have a couple of slave cabins. It was a plantation at one point. But as far as buildings on the property, this is it. So the building over to the left that actually has doors, those are our fancy bathrooms. So working with kids, one of the realizations of our camps is the necessities. So those are actually our restrooms. It's basically really fancy porta potties that get pumped once a week. Other than that, we have water hookups. So we do actually have some water, but it's not fresh water for drinkable, which becomes its entire another issue that had never been a problem prior to COVID-19. So washing your hands is with a very sulfury water. It is not good for drinking, which means we were toting in water for the first time. And then over to the right, you can see what our shelter looks like. We do actually have electricity in there, but it is a screened-in shelter with a tin roof. So it does occasionally get pretty loud in the shelter, but you know, we kind of make it grow. Other than that, behind the shelter, we actually do have two archaeology pits that are used for educational purposes. Because we do a lot of archaeology on the site. We have a staff archaeologist, and the property is actually not open to the public. In fact, the only thing that the Dill is used for is educational programming, meaning we do field trips out there, we do camps, and you know, occasionally a fundraiser, an oyster roast, things like that, because you know it's Charleston. But other than that, it is not open to the public. There's no designated trails. So when we're out there, the kids are watching out for fire ants. So all the normal things that you have in nature, we get to deal with. So our camps usually are a pretty easily run thing. We do basically about 30 kids. We do a 1-to-10 ratio. We run basically every day goes from introduction, and during the introduction they'll go play in the marsh and go crabbing, things like that, and then they will kind of during drop off, then once we are all kind of together and everybody's checked in, what we'll do is we'll do a small lesson, some sort of craft or activity, then we'll do a snack, a walk, another craft, and another activity, and our day is done. Usually that is enough to exhaust majority of the children. So our camps out at the Dill kind of focus on age 5 to 10. So that's our typical setup. And usually on Fridays, we actually open up camp to all family members that want to come in. So if you have a younger brother, a younger sister that's 3, that's wants to go to camp with mom and wants to go to camp with aunt and wants to go to camp with big brother, they can actually do that during Friday. So Friday becomes a lot more of open, a lot more people, a lot more sharing, a lot more COVID exposure. So that was the first thing that got nixed, was family day. Let's see. Pre-COVID-19, you can kind of see some of the activities. So like I said, we used to do an archaeology day. You can see what's in the shelter. We have plastic chairs that we move around. And that's one of my former coworkers teaching basically how we used to do camp. We would do sack races on Fridays. Then with our 1 week of museum camp, or as it happens 2 weeks this year, we do a lot of hands-on interactive things. So we did mummification, and prior to the toilet paper shortage, we used to wrap up kids up as mummies. So basically, pre-COVID, we had easy peasy, regular kids where their brothers, their sisters, their older aunts even would go to camp as a kid, and then they wanted to go to camp. They call it, instead of, the official title is nature trailers. The unofficial title is mud camp. So most of the kids come in excited to do mud camp because my brother did mud camp. He loved it. It was great. So we do have this collective with the community that always want to do mud camp. Well, once COVID came through, we kind of had to figure out, do we hold camp? Do we skip camp this year, virtual camp? What are we going to do? Well, we started to have people calling. And with us not having self or phone service out at the Dill, basically people have our cell phone numbers. So during quarantine, they were not afraid to call us, text us, hey, are we going to do camp? Are we going to do camp? Or can we do camp? Can we please? So that kind of pushed us to make the decision of, I guess the decision was made in early May that they were going to stop quarantine. The city of Charleston was going to open back up, and we were going to be able to hold basically in-person activities. They were going to let some of the city buildings open. So we decided that we were going to give it a whirl. Then we had to figure out the logistics of that. Basically, we wanted to give kids that do our camps every year some sense of normalcy in what was absolutely an insane world. I mean, we're all dealing with it. We all are going crazy, learning virtual things that we never thought we would do. You know, all the things that we're learning, you know, the kids are going through it too. And one of the mission statements, or part of our mission statement is, you know, we are a community, we service the community. We work with locals, we provide educational opportunities for everybody. So being that part of our mission statement, the kind of decision was made, yeah, we are going to go ahead and try to do in-person camp. So that being said, we were going to go ahead and we made the decision that we were going to do 5 weeks at the Dill, and then we were going to attempt to do 1 week inside the museum. So 5 weeks outdoors, 1 week within the museum. But we had to figure out how to do it. So this is me literally triple masked. So you can see the mask that I'm wearing around my neck. We were doing an activity where kids were learning to jump like frogs and different animal movements. So we dressed up like frogs. And then I had my face shield on as well. So one of the first things that we were trying to figure out to do, masking, because technically in Charleston, the mask ordinances that were put in effect and that are still actually in effect all the way up until May 8th, I think is what the extension is right now, is that anybody 10 years or younger does not have to be masked. So do we mask up? How do we make sure the kids are safe? There's a whole lot of that. So the decision obviously was we were going to start out with staff was going to be masked all the time. And like I said, we do a 10-to-1 ratio is kind of our goal for camp. Basically, staff was checking their temperatures every single day. And we would literally check in like, hey, are you okay this morning? Yep, we're good, we're good, we're good, we're good. All right. Then we actually put in 4 different hand washing stations. So in our fun bathrooms, like I said, we have running water. It's not the best water, but it is running water. So that idea, we actually started to hang up things of best hand washing practices. And we got that actually from the camp, or the National Camp Association, for youth camp services. They actually have a signage that you can just print off right off their website, of this is how long you should be washing your hands, and it has directions to wash under your fingernails. So we actually printed them off, laminated them, and put them up as a reminder that just rinsing your hands is not enough. We spent a bit of money on Lysol in between every single activity, every day, just in case. We went and we wiped down all the seats, all the chairs, all of the tables, everything that was there that got touched, used. got wiped down. We had hand sanitizer basically everywhere. We decided to limit the size. We went from 30 campers to 20. Basically, in the education department, we originally had 3 full-time staff. With COVID, we actually lost one of our staff members, so we were down to 2 full-time staff people. And originally, we were actually just going with 2 because that kind of works. It's 1 to 10 kind of ratio, 1 adult, 10 kids. And that kind of covered a lot of what we were doing. We figured out that we were a bit underestimating us, or overestimating, I guess, ourselves, in that we actually ended up understaffing, which ended up being a problem. So we called in a volunteer, and we had at least 3 to 4 people out there, because the amount of time that it took for snack, for example, passing out individual snacks instead of just group food, took a little longer. Refilling water, because we had to bring in gallons of water jugs. So each staff would have to, because somebody had to be pouring the water, so nothing touched or anything like that. So originally we did kind of understaff, and then went to proper staffing. So 1 to 10 was not enough for COVID changes. So we learned that kind of the hard way. So that changed from week 1 to week 2. The snacks were actually packaged individually. So we did individual like snacks. We did fruit gummies every other day, and then we did bags of chips every other day. So the kids actually got to bring in their own snack if it was safely, no allergies, things like that. Originally, drop-off and pickups were basically, parents got there, got to take all their pictures of their kids at camp, and got this really cool interactive. Kids would get out in the marsh, and the parents would have their picture of their kiddos literally getting down and dirty. Unfortunately, to limit basically that extra interaction, we actually went more towards a drop-off line like you would do in school. So parents would literally come out, we would open the doors, the kids would get out, and they would go straight over to their individually assigned areas. One of the things that we found that enabled us to actually do all of this was every child that signed up for camp, we called their parents individually. Asked things, you know, are you comfortable with Miss Jessica, they kind of know me, or Miss Stephanie, you know, being there with your child? Here's the precautions that we are taking individually. You know, we're not going out. We know that we are extra quarantined, even though we're not technically quarantined, because we were taking chances. We understood that. So we did call every parent individually. One of the things that we asked about was, has your kid been quarantined with another kid that's at camp? Are you okay with these 2 kids interacting? Which actually ended up being a really good thing. So while we were sitting at tables, instead of every single child, so having 20 tables out, we put siblings together. We actually also were able to put, like, we had a neighborhood basically of 8 kids that all signed up together, that all came together, that had all been quarantined together. So with those 8 kids, their parents were kind of okay with them interacting with each other. So even though they were technically separated from everybody else, that did limit basically how many interactions even an added-in kid had, because they've already been quarantined and they were all kind of in that circle together. Then we did letters to parents to remind them that, you know, your kid is coming to camp, that safety for this starts at home. If your kid is sick, please do not send them to camp, that we are depending on them to keep everybody else's kids safe. So we kind of, I don't want to say put the pressure back on the parents, but it was a, you know, we are a community, we're doing this, but we need your help. So that was one thing that we kind of put back on parents. With the same idea, normally what we would do is have basically all of our craft supplies for the week in the middle of a table, and everybody would kind of interact. Well, not wanting to do that this year, we bought individual paintbrushes, we bought individual glue sticks, we bought individual papers for everybody. We bought, everything was individually done. The only thing that we actually asked for the parents to provide was a pack of markers for each kid. Then, of course, we had backup pack markers just in case parents forget, that kind of thing. And we didn't actually use the markers until the second day. So if they forgot the first day, remember the second day, that also kind of gave them a little bit of chance. So basically our shelter is a big open area. So we actually did divide out 6 feet spaces. Kind of made it fun. So once we actually divided out 6 feet spaces, we literally taped them off and put kids' names on them. So every kid had their 6 foot space. They had their 6 foot space at their table. And even though we were outdoors, we still kind of were trying to maintain that socially distant thing. So we also had to change the activities that we did. So the activities that we would normally do, like I said, you can kind of see what we would normally do. Day one, crabbing during drop off, we changed our activities. So day one, you can see over to the right, that's the kids crabbing in the marsh. So we have buckets and grabbers for kids to kind of go out and learn about the marsh. If you're not from around here, kids get to play in pluff mud, which is extra fun. Kids actually love playing in the pluff mud. It smells and it's full of bugs and crabs, so they love it. So while we do that, that's basically what we were doing during drop off. And that was easy enough that as long as we reminded everybody the entire time, hey guys, don't forget you're socially distant from everybody. The kids were actually really good about it. I think just basically any chance for them to do something semi-normal, the kids were willing to do. We did do some birding, and you can see that over to the left, the picture that we did for over here. You can kind of see how the kids were grouped together if they were siblings or quarantine neighbors versus where the kids were spread out. So you can kind of see there's some clumps and there's some that were spread out. We did have a bit of a problem of kids going, well, how come those kids get to play together, that kind of thing. But not as much as we thought we would. Some of the kids were very open to, this year I get to be by myself, but still do cool stuff. So we did change what we were doing. Once we had our 20 kids, had them into assigned groups, basically we then further divided them into even smaller groups. So, and they were with those even smaller groups, the 2 groups of 10 every day. So that limited our exposure. Basically, instead of being exposed to 20 kids or 19 other kids, I guess, your child was now limited to, even for accidental exposure, 9 other kids. If there were siblings in the group, it was 3, 4 possible exposures. So by doing all of that, we were kind of limiting how much crossover. So instead of doing basically doing activity to activity, walking in between, we literally split off, and 10 kids did one activity, 10 kids did the other activity, and then we swapped, and we swapped out all of our tools, all of our any kind of necessary things that we needed. We ended up buying double. Miss Jessica's group had part of it, and Miss Stephanie's group had part of it. So we each had our own, basically doubles of everything. So it wasn't big of an expense, but by the end, that means that we actually kind of have more of everything now, so it kind of works out. So day one, what we do is a program called Track the Treasure. So each kid actually got their own individual compass. And we talked about, they went basically following a path through the woods. So we were able to spread out, socially distant through everything. And they were able to find basically treasure that we had hidden. Then we would reset, and the group that did track the treasure then switched over to track and scat. So we did a program on poop, because kids and summer camps and fun. With it being a wildlife preserve, they don't always get to see a lot of the animals, which kind of bumps some of the kids out. So we kind of started introducing that just because you don't see the animals doesn't mean they're not here. How do we find them? Well, then we use the evidence that's left behind. So we did a tracks and scat, and one of the items that we made were a plaster mold. So we have molds basically of different tracks, and the kids were able to do where they made a plaster mold, and that was one of their activities. When that dried, they were able to take that home. So day 2, we actually went to predator and prey. Half of the group was predators, the other half were prey, and then they swapped. So I am Project Wild, Project Wet, and Project Learning Tree certified. So we took some of the activities out of those books and kind of adjusted them. And for prey, what we did was basically a relay race. So we actually marked out boundaries and split those 10 kids now into 2 groups of 5. And we actually did a race of basically who could find the worm. It was a camouflage activity. And we just had little pieces of yarn out in this huge area. Basically, kids went running, grabbed whichever first worm that they found and ran back. Then the next kid would go, and so forth and so on. And it ended up working out pretty well. There wasn't a lot of overlap, kids not really running into each other, so that helped a lot. So that was our prey aspect. For predators, we did an activity about animal movement, including some animals that kids don't typically think of as predators. That's when our frog masks come in. It's not something when kids think of predators, they don't think of frogs as predators, but they are. They do eat bugs. So that was one thing that really threw the kids off. And then for our activity, what we did was we actually dissected owl pellets so that they could basically see how predator and prey kind of go together. Day 3 for us is the salt life. So we are living next to the ocean in Charleston. And what we did was basically divided us up into half of the kids doing ocean, the other half of the kids doing pluff mud painting and actually fish prints. And then, so the kids were kind of spread out once again. Sorry, there's my dog. Told you he'd come in at some point. So we were able to divide those kids, and then once again, we just swapped. Day 4 was habitat time. We have a freshwater pond that is a man-made pond where we have nesting wood storks. So we did actually walk all the way out there, which is about a 3/4 of a mile walk. So we walked out, and then we were hunting different types of habitats. And we came back and we made kind of our own habitats. We made toad abodes, and we made decorated some birdhouses. Then our last day, we focused on some of the research and stuff that gets done at the Dill. So you can see kind of every day was focused on animals and the nature part. Well, humans are part of nature now. We are a fully integrated part of humanity's part of nature. So how do we interact with that? So because archaeology is such a huge part of the Dill's history, we do actually do archaeology. So we did a small section on archaeology, and then we did, so that was the dig it part instead of Family Day. And then we added in Native American games. A lot of the Native Americans, the local indigenous population here in Charleston, Did a lot of games focusing around fishing, hunting, things like that. So we kind of pulled in some of those games that the kids got to have, including me and the other teacher every day or every Friday had a competition of ladder throwing. Who could throw the farthest spear after the 4 weeks or after the 5 weeks? I won. So I got that. I got that. So that's kind of how we changed all of our activities. So basically at the end of the 5 weeks, woohoo, we did it. But that was the easy one. As weird as that sounds, all the changes that had to come in, the Dill was the easy because that's outdoors. That automatically gives you that social distancing. It also automatically gives you that fresh air circulation. And normally we would do 2 weeks of summer camp at the museum. But with it being indoors, we decided to go to 1 week. And here's where, if you can see, I bought my snacks all individually. So everything individually wrapped. We got fans for circulation, lots and lots and lots of snacks that we needed to provide. So when we were doing in the classroom, because we were going to be indoors, basically we started with clearing out everything in our classroom. All the extra chairs, all of the extra animal mounds. We had a puppet stage, a sandbox in our classroom. Everything was gone. We took basically everything except for socially distant tables out of our classroom. So when we basically brought in everybody, did the same thing as the first 6 weeks or the first 5 weeks, calling up like, okay, who's your kid quarantined with? What friends are they coming with? Are they coming with siblings? Do the siblings get along? Can we interact with? So we did have quite a few parents that had carried over from our nature trailers into summer camp, that had signed up for the in-person indoors camp. So that kind of helped us out a little bit. We changed activities. Like I said, we used to do a lot of team building activities. Well, team building and social distancing is not always the easiest thing to do. So instead of like we used to do Olympic games and Olympic dress, we would actually change that and we did Olympic racing so kids could individually do things. So a lot of our activities changed again for this. We disinfected everything multiple times a day. For this, we actually ended up pulling in curators, our maintenance staff, our PR team. Everybody came in and basically between everything, mass disinfection, every bathroom, mass disinfection. Because, at that point, we really didn't know how long COVID was staying on different, they had a guess, but it was just a guess. I guess it's still just a guess. But how long the germs were staying on surfaces. So we disinfected everything. And we used our main classroom for most of the time, but we also went through the galleries. We went through our back halls. We actually used our outdoor space. We used our secondary classrooms. We have a kids room that had been closed off for the time. So we basically closed the doors, locked the doors, and that was used for camps. So we were able to go through and have everything kind of spread out enough that we did feel pretty comfortable with it. Again, this was the first time that kids were masking. This is, we asked the parents to have your kid understand that because we are indoors, we can't social distance as easy. We're only going to be 3 feet apart instead of 6 feet apart. So because of that, we are going to add in a mask requirement. So the kids were actually really good about masking. We just basically reminded them that, if you guys want to be here, you guys want to do this, we do have to take this safety precaution. So as long as we kind of reminded them when they first got there, After snack, they were pretty easy about it. But it was a constant reminder, guys, just for our safety, so we can keep doing this. And that was kind of what we emphasized, that in order for us to be able to do this, we need your help. So the kids were all pretty good with that. And then, of course, continued staff health monitoring. What didn't work? So these are some more pictures of the Dill, just because it's a fun place to be. So like I said, we learned the hard way that we originally started out understaffing, both my boss and I are very comfortable doing, one teacher to 30 kids. That's basically what Charleston County School District is 1 to 30 or 1 to 25, I guess. So we're both comfortable with doing that many things. So when we went down to the 1 to 10 ratio, we kind of felt like, oh, this is going to be easy. Only have to work with 10 kids, social distancing, only 10 kids, doing the activities with 10 kids, not going to be a problem. I realized that we didn't account for, okay, but one of you are going to have to leave to go and disinfect the bathrooms after every bathroom break. So somebody's going to have to go in and disinfect the sinks for every bathroom break. So doing that, we actually did, like I said, brought in a couple of volunteers to help out. We actually looked out, one of the school nurses, the local school nurses, was like, I'll come in and help, especially if we're doing that. Perfect. So she was kind of prepping for her school to reopen, because our secondary, the 1 week within the museum was actually the last week of August before kids went back to school. Basically all the parents and teachers dropped their kids off and then went to do their last minute school shopping and all of that prep. So for spring break, we just, like I said, did 2 weeks of spring break camp. And one of the things that we didn't do, because we maxed it out again at 20. When we did the 1 or the 3 adults during spring break camp, we did not automatically assign kids an area with their names on it, which we kind of assumed that some of these kids would automatically do that, sit in the same area with the same kids every day, which was our boo-boo. And, we kind of learned the hard way that we're going back to assigned areas instead of just, this is your area, just everybody spread out. It's going to go back to assigned areas. We did not push as much for spring break camp of adult drop-off as we did originally. So we did have problems with parents getting out of the cars more, kind of doubling that exposure. So after a couple of days, we were like, no, we got to go back to, you're just dropping your kids off. I'm sorry. I know you want pictures. Email me and I'll get a picture of your kid to send to you, kind of thing. So we did send lots of pictures from our personal cell phones out, just so that, the parents weren't missing that. They've sent their kids there and they've got all 4 of their kids in the same spot, 10 years apart. So because of that, we did start to take more pictures and kind of did that more for the parents. So that became another responsibility for us, which was fun. But overall, it kind of worked. It did work well for us, we thought. And all the parents seemed to think so. And then I found this and I thought this was hilarious. It made me feel better about, what my parents think I do, what my friends think I do, what society thinks I do, what my director thinks I do, what I think I do, what I really do. So I just thought that was hilarious. That being said, I wanted to give you guys kind of an open, since we did do it right after quarantine, we've probably made most of the mistakes. We also did a lot of virtual over the summer as well. We learned from those things as well. So I wanted to make sure that we basically had a question and answer time, because we made plenty of mistakes and, adjusted as we went. So I wanted to make sure that everybody had a chance to ask anything, and I wanted to kind of open it up. So thank you for listening to me. And what questions you got?
I may have missed it. Did any of the kids or staff develop COVID during the camp?
Nope. We actually totally did luck out. We didn't have a single confirmed case during camp, neither indoors nor outdoors. Like I said, now looking back and the information that we have now about COVID, we tended to over clean compared to guidelines now. We will probably still continue that because, knock on wood, a year in, and we have actually been open to the public, receiving visitors, general guests, the whole 9 yards since last May. Last Memorial Day, we were actually open to the public. We've been open since then. And out of everybody, we've had one staff member that caught it. And we're all face to face, even now. So we have lucked out, although we're all starting to finally get vaccinated. But the person that actually got COVID did not catch it at work. We disinfected heavily after that, but we tended to over sanitize, I guess. So no, we actually had through camp a 100% success rate of no COVID. Any other?
Nice. And if you're finished sharing your screen, Jessica, then that way we'll get everybody.
See some faces.
Yeah.
So then I just, I'll just continue to talk. If you guys haven't learned yet, I'd like to kind of hear myself. So one of the other things that we've kind of, in Charleston that we do a lot is we actually partner a lot with the other historic sites. There's a ton of us. So we are actually getting ready to start up and do some multi-site field trips starting in the next couple of months. So
how are you going to handle transportation on that?
So for the couple of things, the spaces in between are within walking distance. So it is going to be outside. Now, the city of Charleston, some of the issues that we're having quite literally happened last night, overnight, kind of in this morning kind of thing. The city basically lifted some of their mask ordinances in that being outside, they do not have to be masked. Well, with us working with kids, I love my little germ factories. I do. I remember every year to get my flu shot. When the first kid sneezes in my face, we all have high immune systems, let's be honest. We all do that.
Yeah.
So one of the issues that is starting to pop up now is, well, the city of Charleston, the kids don't have to be masked. The kids don't have to be masked when they're walking from site to site. So I expect actually that we're going to start getting some more pushback. But we've basically just said, from our administration, I'm sorry, this is a requirement to keep our staff safe. A lot of our volunteers, our part-time people, are retirees. And even though now some of them are vaccinated for a long time, they weren't. And so, we lucked out. The museum provided PPE, personal protective equipment for everybody. Everybody got face shields. They got the opportunity to wear masks if they preferred that over the face shield. We provide lots and lots of hand sanitizer. In our historic houses, everything is wrapped in plastic that gets wiped down 30,000 times a day. So we've lucked out within even like our part-time staff that deals face-to-face with public, that I guess as of right now, knock on wood, it's working. That we've only had one case out of everybody through the entire time.
Nice.
Been facing pushback from parents when we ask the kids to mask up. I'm expecting that that's going to be a bigger issue for us coming forth. One of the things, we have had a lot of homeschool groups that have pushed back. And basically what we did was just said, look, our staff, there's some that are immunocompromised. There are some that are older. There are some that are going to be perfectly fine if they get it. But in order to protect the weakest in the bunch, you're going to have to be masked or you're not going to be able to do this program. I mean, that's just it. And it says it on our website. If you go to, it's www.charlestonmuseum.org, pretty easy website. And if you look across the running banner on the top of our main website, before you can get in to make a reservation, to buy tickets, anything like that, it is a big red running banner that says masks are required for all. And then every single event page, every single thing that people have to buy, when you register, it says you will be masked. Masks are required. Masks are required. When they call in, we remind them that masks are required, and it's not just for your safety, it's for the safety of everybody. And that's kind of what we've been pushing is, you know, you might feel perfectly comfortable, and that's wonderful. I might feel comfortable, and that's okay. But we don't have everybody vaccinated yet. We don't have everybody perfectly comfortable yet. And until we do, we have to protect, it's our responsibility, social responsibility to protect the weakest in the bunch of us so that we have our full staff. And I expect that we're going to start having a lot more pushback, and that, like I said, the city of Charleston just changed their ordinances last night. So we'll see. But the museum plans to just still have it on there. You have to be masked. That being said, one of the worst things that we're dealing with is the people that are masking under the nose. So as people come into our historic sites, the Dill, all of it, it's fully masked, including your nose. Sorry if you're uncomfortable. It's not too bad right now, but we had more issues last year when it was hot and muggy. So with everything, I expect us to actually have a little bit more problems this year than last. But, you know, as we're coming out of it, who knows? I mean, who knows? Any others?
Any other questions or comments for Jessica?
Tijuana. I have a little friend with me. Can you hear me?
Oh, that's awesome.
I foster little baby newborns for SPCA. So this is dinner time. I just want to comment.
Yeah.
If you can have your pet, I can have mine.
There's mine.
Oh.
Thank you. Having been one of the original evaluators of Project Wild way back in the early 1980s, I thank you for using Wild Wet and all the other activities from the days gone by.
Thank you. Yeah, I was saying, if you guys ever get a chance, Project Learning Tree, Project Wet, Project Wild are amazing resources. Basically, I did a triple workshop, and did all the trainings. And that is what we pulled to do almost every alteration, both in the museums and at the Dill camps, is from Project Wet and Project Wild. That's basically the only way we were able to come up with activities that did social distance as well as all kind of the alterations.
Great. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, we are at the end of our hour, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I just want to remind you guys that we do have 2 sessions again tomorrow, our lunch and learn and a happy hour. So I hope you'll join us for those. And thank you again, Jessica. That was some really great information. Really appreciate it. So thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us tonight.
Thank you guys for joining. Have a wonderful night, guys.
Have a good night.
Dog.